Terence, a construction engineer, was laying out the final camp area and a compound for Christian, which it was necessary to build, not so much to keep him in, but to keep the wild lions of the area out, to give some protection to him and us, especially at night. No intersections, no roads turning off, no conventional signposts, just a torn-off length of toilet paper tied on a bush, fluttering in the breeze. Toilet paper turning became a familiar phrase, an important landmark for us. It simply meant that you could be pretty certain that if there was a breakdown from now on, you had a choice. You could mend it yourself or walk. We were now at about 2,500 feet, having dropped down some 3,000 feet from Nairobi, a Maasai word meaning the cold place. The air here, as we traveled, struck us like a blast furnace. Not enough for Christian to endure in a heavy coat, adapted over generations to a more temperate European climate. There was always the agony of crossing seams of lava dust. All at once you were in a cloud of fine powder which got into everything. Stinging eyes, choking throat and nose. Half suffocated, Christian buried his head in misery. Terence was awaiting our arrival. This is where we would live for a while, where Christian would have his chance to enter the world of natural lions and other animals. He would need protection while he learned about this new life, how to survive, what was dangerous. The most dangerous animals he'd met so far were our dogs in England. Now, in the heat of the African night, he would hear the strange sounds of the African bush. His ancestors would have recognized them easily some 4 or 5 generations back, before they were brought to Europe. I wondered what natural instincts would be left, could be awakened in a lion, whose friends were human, whose school was a furniture shop, whose ancestral home was a zoo. Early next morning, George was off again. His first call would be Nairobi, briefly, to pick up Christian's crate, then south to Naivasha. There he would try to collect a large, fully grown African lion called Boy, a lion that had been given his freedom and had lived with wild lions for 4 years. By associating Christian with Boy, George hoped to establish the nucleus of a new pride of lions. Boy and George had been friends, comrades one might say, for almost 7 years. They had first met during the making of a film called Born Free, and in the years that followed, while Boy was living a natural life in the wilds, free to go anywhere he pleased, he never forgot to call in at George's camp to see his old friend. Boy became the dominant male of George's pride, the first artificial or man-made pride, composed of lions no longer required once the filming of Born Free was over. In the large national park where they all lived, Boy successfully defended their territory against the wild lions of the area, stealing their females, killing buffaloes and other large animals. This was the formidable African lion that Christian would have to face. While waiting for George's return, Christian, Ace and John explored the territory around the camp, resting occasionally by the cool waters of the Tana River. Although lions are good swimmers, Christian had never been keen to get his feet wet. We remembered the last time in England we'd taken him out for exercise. An early morning at the seaside. England was thousands of miles away, and Christian, if all went well in the next week or two, would never return. Tomorrow morning, George would be back with the big lion, Boy, and the association of lion with lion must start. Gradually, carefully, with every precaution. Sadly, this touching relationship could not continue. George arrived back. The 600-mile journey had gone according to schedule, but he had had to skirt Nairobi and the densely populated areas by night. Boy would not tolerate crowds of people surging round his cage. They had traveled non-stop. The journey had been a nightmare. Christian's old crate with its precious content had to be unloaded first and quickly placed in the cool shade. But that was all there was time to do. George felt he must see to Boy. The rehabilitation of the Bournefree lions had been successful for everyone except Boy. Although the leader and most powerful of them all, he had been gored when bringing down a buffalo and severely injured. For the last 8 months, he'd been convalescing at George's camp at Naivasha. Of course, he'd had minor injuries before. It's natural for a predator to take a certain amount of punishment. To survive, a pride needs to kill at least once or twice a week. When George found Boy, he was emaciated. He could hardly walk. But it wasn't just starvation, cuts, and superficial injuries. His foreleg was badly broken in 2 places. Sue and Tony Harthorne, the famous veterinary surgeons, agreed only a major operation could save his life. Boy took the jab without protest. His trust in George was incredible. Beside a double fractured foreleg, he had other injuries. As the anesthetic took effect and his vision became blurred, George sat with his old comrade to comfort him and to lure him gently into oblivion. The operation was performed under the most primitive conditions, with only field equipment and no X-rays to help.